The woods were already filled with shadows one June evening, just before 8 o'clock. Thought a bright sunset still glimmered faintly among the trunks of the trees. A little girl was driving home her cow, applauding the dilatory provoking creature in her behavior, but a valued companion for all that. They were going away from the western light and striking deep into the dark woods, but their feet were familiar with the path, and it was no matter whether their eyes could see it or not.
There was hardly a night the summer through when the old cow could be found waiting at the pasture bars. On the contrary, it was her greatest pleasure to hide herself away among the high huckleberry bushes, and though she were a loud bell, she had made the discovery that if one stood perfectly still it would not ring. So Sylvia had to hunt for her until she found herself and call.
With never an answering moo, until her childish patience was quite spent. If the creature had not given good milk in and plenty of it, the case would have seemed very different to her owners. Besides, Sylvia had all the time there was, and very little use to make for it. Sometimes, in pleasant weather, it was consolation to look upon the cow's pranks as an intelligent attempt to play hide and seek.
And as the child had no playmates, she lent herself to this amusement with a good deal of zest. Though this chase had been so long that the wary animal herself had given an unusual signal of her whereabouts, Sylvia had only laughed when she came upon Mistress Molly at the swamp side, and nudged her affectionately homeward with a twig of birch leaves. The old cow was not inclined to wander farther. She even turned in the right direction for once as they left the pasture, and stepped along the road at a good pace. She was quite ready to be milked now, and seldom stopped to browse. Sylvia wondered what her grandmother would say because they were so late. It was a great while since she had left home at a half past 5 o'clock. But everybody knew the difficulty of making this errand a short one.
Mrs. Tiley had chased the horned torment too many summer evenings herself to blame any one else for lingering, and was the only thankful as she waited that she had Sylvia. Nowadays, to give such a valuable assistance, the good woman suspected that Sylvia loitered occasionally on her own account. There never was such a child for straying about out of doors since the world was never made. Everybody said that it was a good change for a little maid who had tried to grow for 8 years in a crowd manufacturing town, but as for Sylvia herself, it seemed as if she never had been alive at all before she came to live at the farm. She thought often with wistful compassion of wretched dry geranium that belonged to the town neighbor.
Afraid of fox? Oh, Mrs. Tiley said to herself, with a smile after she had made the unlikely choice of Sylvia from her daughter's houseful of children, and was returning to the farm. Afraid of fox, they said. I guess she won't be troubled no great with em up to the old place. When they reached the door of the lonely house and stopped to unlock it, and the cat came to purr loudly and rub against them. A desert pussy indeed, but fat with young robins. Sylvia whispered that this was a beautiful place to live in, and she never should wish to go home. The companions followed the shady wood road. the cow taking slow steps and the chow very fast ones. The cow stopped long and at the brook to drink, as if the pasture were not half a swamp, and Sylvia stood still and waited, letting her bare feet cool themselves in the shoal water, while the great twilight moths struck softly against her. She waited on through the brook as the cow moved away, and listened to the thrushes with a heart that beat fast with pleasure.
There was a stirring in the great boughs overhead. They were full of little birds and beasts that seemed to be wide awake, and going about their world, or else saying good night to each other and sleep twitters. Sylvia herself felt sleepy as she walked along. However, it was not much farther to the house, and the air was soft and swift. She was not often in the woods so late as this, and it made her feel as if she were a part of the great shadows and the moving leaves. She was just thinking how long it seemed since she first came to the farm a year ago, and wondering if everything went on in the noisy town just the same as when she was there. The thought of the great red-faced boy who used to chase and frighten her made her hurry along the path to escape from the shadow of the trees.
Suddenly, this little woods girl is horror-stricken to hear a clear whistle not very far away, not a bird's whistle, which would have a sort of friendliness, but a boy's whistle, determined and somewhat aggressive. Sylvia left the cow to whatever sad fate might await her, and stepped discreetly aside into the bushes, but she was just too late. The enemy had discovered her, and called out in a very cheerful and persuasive tone.
Hello, little girl. How far is it to the road?
And trembling, Sylvia answered almost inaudible, "A good ways." She did not dare to look boldly at the tall young man, who carried a gun over his shoulder, but she came out of her bush and again followed the cow, while he walked alongside.
I have been hunting for some birds,
The stranger said kindly,
and I have lost my way, and I need a friend very much. Don't be afraid.
and he added gallantly,
Speak up and tell me, what's your name? And whether you think I can spend the night at your house and go out gunning early in the morning.
Sylvia was more alarmed than before. Would not her grandmother consider her much blame? But who could have foreseen such an accident as this? It did not appear to be her fault, and she hung her head as if the stem of it were broken, but managed to answer, sadly, with much effort, when her companion again asked her name. Mrs. Tyler was standing in the doorway when the trio came into view. The cow gave a loud moo by way of explanation. "You better speak up for yourself, you old child." Where she tucked herself away this time, slyly. Sylvia kept an odd silence. She knew by instinct that her grandmother did not comprehend the gravity of the situation. She must be mistaken a stranger for one of the farmlands of the region. The young man stood his gun beside the door, and dropped a heavy game bag beside it. Then he made Mrs. Talley good evening, and repeated his wayfarer story, and asked if he could have a night's lodging.
Put me anywhere you like,
He said,
I must be off early in the morning, before day, but I'm very hungry indeed. You can give me some milk at any rate. That's plain.
Dear sakes, yes, responded the hostess, whose long slumbering hospitality seemed to be easily awakened. You might fare better if you went out on the main road a mile or so, but you're welcome to what you got. I'll make right off, and you make yourself at home. You can sleep or husk or feathers, she proffered graciously. I raised them all myself. There's a good pasturing for geese just below the here towards the marsh. Now step brown and set a plate for the gentleman's Livy. She was glad to have something to do, and she was hungry herself.
To be continued.